So, welcome to the McCarthy Observatory, and I'm glad you're still here. This will be a little bit different than what you've heard, and some similarities too. Anyway, I'm Monty Robeson. So, solar eclipses are not rare events. One happens about every year and a half on average, a total solar eclipse, somewhere on Earth, like Bill just said. So if you're willing and able to travel, you can see many of them. One of the guys I'll talk about here in a bit, he's seen over 20 of them. But for any particular location, they are rare events. Here are the ones that I found that happened either in or very close to Connecticut. 1925, 32, 59, 1970. So I think that a total eclipse of the sun is one of nature's most amazing and powerful events, and that everyone should see at least one. Partial eclipses, like we had here on August 21st, about 70% coverage, they're exciting, but they're nothing like totality. There's a big difference. I mean, the sun is too bright to look at safely until the instant that it's totally covered. And then you can. And then that's the only time you get to see that amazing corona around it. So your total eclipse experience will be best with prior planning, a lot of prior planning, like both Bill and Roger did. They planned on it for a long time. But you also still have to have the flexibility to move quickly to an area that has clear skies. Or like Roger, he had a problem with the traffic, so he didn't end up where he'd planned to go. But you know, and Bill was talking about the weather right up until almost the day that he woke up, the day of the eclipse, was concerned about the weather. So you have to be, if you really want to see it, you have to have that flexibility to move quickly. Anyway, so I've seen two total eclipses now. Here is the first one, July 10th of 1972, and I saw it from Nova Scotia. Here's a blow-up of that. The greatest eclipse was up near Hudson's Bay. And so I rented an airplane at Danbury, and three of my high school chums, we flew up to Nova Scotia, landed in Bangor to get more fuel, and then on up, landed in Sydney, which is on Cape Breton Island up there. And then the day of the eclipse, we drove down to that symbol there, the red symbol, to Antigonish, which was right on the center line of the eclipse. And it was amazing. It was amazing. Now, my recollections was that it was a much longer eclipse than this one on the 21st, and that the sky was much darker. And I don't think either one of those is correct. They were actually, this one was maybe a few seconds shorter than the one on the 21st of August. So I guess your memory can play some tricks on you, but I still have very distinct memories of it. We found a farmer's field that had a hill in the middle of it, and we ran up to the top of the hill. But like both of them, I think, said that all the way around the horizon there was 3 or 4 degrees where it was light, and you could see that it was light. But it was very dark where we were. And then the other recollection that I have is that as soon as it became light, as soon as the totality was over, all over in 360 degrees there were birds flying. They were spooked. They didn't know what had just happened, so they took to the air and were flying around kind of randomly. They settled down after a bit. But anyway, right after that, Carly Simon wrote her most famous song, released it, You're So Vain. Hear the opening lyrics, well, I hear you went up to Saratoga and your horse naturally won. Then you flew your Learjet up to Nova Scotia to see the total eclipse of the sun. Now anyway, here was this one. This is the first one to go all the way across the United States. That's why they call it the Great American Eclipse. We're the only land mass that it crossed. First one since 1918, so 99 years. There's the greatest eclipse down there where Illinois and Kentucky and Tennessee all kind of come together. And this is a map of where I was heading. So I had planned originally, a couple years ago, I wanted to get the whole family from all over the world to go to the deserts of Oregon. I thought was the best place to see it weather-wise. But that didn't work out. We had a sick dog and whatnot, so it just wasn't going to work out that I could do that. So I was planning to be here. Well, Sunday morning, the day before the eclipse, my wife accused me of moping around. And she knew she wasn't going to get any work out of me that day. So she practically threw me out of the house. In fact, she spent about 2 hours helping me collect stuff so I could go on the trip. So I was, and she was the reason I went there, because she threw me out of the house. Anyway, I had been checking the weather like Bill had, and like Roger, I'm sure, over and over and over, and I wanted to go to Nebraska. I didn't have time to go. The only place that looked like it would have good weather was eastern Tennessee that I could get to by driving. So I picked a place. Chattanooga's just off the map down here, and here's Knoxville. So about halfway between Knoxville and Chattanooga, I was aiming for this little town of Sweetwater, but I ended up over here in Madisonville. But now this is a picture, handheld, while I'm driving 70 or 75 on Interstate 40 there in eastern Tennessee. It's not a good picture, but what the sign said, and it would flash different messages. This is what my camera happened to pick up. No parking on shoulders or ramp, and the next part of the sign would be during eclipse. Tell me, how often do you see a sign like that? No parking during eclipse. So I thought that'd be worthy of a picture. So I didn't dare park. Yeah, you.
It made me think, so are you allowed to park not during the eclipse?
Yeah, well, I don't think they like it any time if you park on an interstate. And it's not a safe thing to do anyway, I'll tell you what. Anyway, I got down into Sweetwater, and they had blocked off the center of town. There were a couple hundred people down past the police cars. And there were a couple hundred people that I saw were walking towards that. And this is probably, about an hour before totality. And I didn't like the puffy cumulus clouds that were building up. This was just before 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and that's, you know, a good time for cumulus to build up, whereas Bill and Roger saw it in the morning. And so I found a little church. I wasn't going to pay to park. There's so many places. There was even a cemetery there with a guy out front with a sign saying Eclipse parking and another guy waving you in, but I didn't feel like a cemetery was a good place to see it. Anyway, I found this little church with about a dozen people out there, and I pulled in, turned the engine off about 15 minutes before totality, and asked if they wouldn't mind if a old retired Yankee shared the Eclipse with them, and they were very, very friendly and gracious. One of the gals asked if I had Eclipse glasses, and I said no, I'd given one pair that I had left over from the Venus transits to my wife, and another pair to one of my daughters. Well, that's where I saw it. You can't see here because they're not illuminated, but the church has some outdoor lighting here, security lighting. And about 2 minutes before totality, they came on because they were on a photo switch. So they came on. That was interesting. All right. So what I come away with this one. Again, like Bill said, it was too short, and you want to hit the rewind button or something. But this is nature, folks. It's happened. It's gone. So 2.5 minutes of totality. I saw Venus up there, just really brightly, but there wasn't a cloud in the sky when it occurred. But my recollection is that the corona was much more spectacular than I remembered from the eclipse in 1972. And that the horizon was bright up higher, maybe 10 or 15 degrees. You could see the light all the way around you, but it was dark overhead. Not quite as dark as a dark night, but pretty dark. But the corona was just magnificent, and it was changing. You could see it changing over time. Anyway, here's the next one in about 7 years. This one will be a little bit longer eclipse. This will be about 4 minutes, maybe 4.5. And it's closer to us to drive. Here's a picture of it. The red is the center line of it. And you see it. The greatest eclipse is actually down in Mexico. And it goes through a lot of, it goes very close to Dallas, and then on up through Ohio and a little bit of Pennsylvania, through New York, and then Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine, some Canada. But again, we just want to say, look at the date. It's April. You know, April showers bring May flowers. So the weather is going to be iffier. I mean, there's certainly stretches of crystal clear days in the beginning of April, but you can't bet on it. So whatever planning you make, you got to be flexible and be able to move in a hurry if you need to. So anyway, but an even better one is in 2045. This one will be about 6 minutes long. And again, the whole United States. So you know, if I knew I was going to live this long, I would have taken better care of myself when I was a youngster. But I'll tell you, I'd be 99 for this one, and I'm going to start taking my vitamins and start jogging and all that. And I'd like to see it. Yes, ma'am.
Why is it so much longer?
We'll get to that in just one second.
Okay, thank you.
Just 1 second. This guy, Mr. Eclipse, Fred Espinac, he's the one that made all those charts, these type charts, and everything else. He's written all sorts of stuff about it. He's Mr. Eclipse. He's seen about 20 of them himself. He just retired from NASA. But anything that you need to know about eclipses, he knows and he communicates. And he seems like just a wonderful guy. Anyway, here's what he says. This is a little technical. I'm going to go through it quickly. You don't have to know it, but it just maybe some nice background, and maybe it'll lead to some research on your part if you care. This Saros cycle. It was known by the Chaldeans. They were an ancient group of people near Babylon in present-day Iraq. Okay, they knew about this about 700 or 800 years BC. So people back then were equally as smart as us, if not smarter. We know a whole lot more because we have that history of progress by mankind. So we know a lot more than they knew, but they were just as smart, so they figured this out. So anyway, the Saros cycle, a synodic month, that means from new moon to new moon, 29 and a half days, an anomalistic month, from perigee to perigee. That means the point in the Earth's, the moon's orbit around the Earth that it's closest to Earth. So from close to Earth, 27 and a half days. And a draconian month is node to node. That means when the moon crosses the ecliptic, which is the plane of the solar system. When it crosses it to when it crosses it again is 27 and a quarter days. So if you do the math, they all can add up to the same thing every 18 years, 11 days, and 8 hours is a Saros cycle. Okay? So down here in this last paragraph, he says, any two eclipses separated by one Saros cycle share very similar geometries. They occur at the same node with the moon at nearly the same distance from Earth and in the same time of year. But if you look up here, it's 18 years, 11 days, and 8 hours. That 8 hours throws it off. The Earth turns on its axis in 24 hours. So 8 hours is a third of that. So it will be when the Earth, 18 years and 11 days later, you get another eclipse, but it's a third of the way around the Earth. And then a third of the way after another 18 years. And then the final 18 years, it'll be back the same. And that's a total of 54 years, 34 days. Now take a look at this. So here was this eclipse we just had. Here is the eclipse, the total eclipse of July 20th, 1963. And what I want you to get out of this is the geometry of it. See, it kind of comes down a little bit and goes straight for a while and then curves up. It's kind of coming down, goes straight for a while and curves up. in the same location, sort of. This is actually getting closer to the South Pole. All right, but you do the math. 2017 subtract 1963 is 54 years and about 34 days. About, okay? Here's the next one. April of 2024, if you subtract 1970 from 2024, 54 years and about a month. But look at the geometry, it's different. It's going up like that, kind of curves and goes up. See that? Same kind of geometry. Saros series is 139, 139. This one here was a Saros of 145. Here's another 145. Separated by 54 years. It's all like a big clockwork, the solar system. And here's the one that I saw in Nova Scotia in 1972. Very similar to the one that went across the U.S. in 1918, 54 years before. That's the Saros cycle.
And a question back there.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, how did they figure out the calculus or whatever, was it recorded somewhere that they had this information?
I envision kind of nerds that were their astronomers that they kept in a tower somewhere, and they kept marking down things that they saw and experienced and kept records. And then the next one, or maybe back then clay tablets, I don't know. But yeah, people, I can't tell you how they exactly figured it out, but people are smart. They figured it out, and they communicated, either certainly by talking and probably by some sort of written record of some sort. So this is the Saros cycle. Look, from 1937, 54 years is 1991, another 54 is this. So it's in the same place with the same shape every 54 years, but one Saros cycle is that 18 years, right? So 45 and 18 is 63 and 18 is 81. See, that's what I mean by that 8 hours and the Earth rotating. Anyway, you don't need to know that. It was just a kind of a fun thing that I wanted to share with you. Anyway, that's it, and I'll take whatever questions you are, and I'm ready to duck in case you're going to throw a cabbage at me, which had never happened in here, but it's been close, I guess. Anyway, there's so many. Roger, I imagine you could turn those lights on if you care to, bud. That's what I know, and that's what I've seen with. Yes.
I'm just curious, like, talk about Virgo in September 23rd. Is it like you can see with your own eyes, or you have to see through a telescope? I heard like September 23rd, the sky people can see the Virgo star.
To see Virgo, the constellation?
Yeah.
Well, you can see the constellation naked eye. You don't need a telescope. Is there an event happening in September 21st?
23rd.
23rd?
Yeah, I fucking talk about, this month, so I just like how you know which one is which, but they kind of, the constellations kind of draw out.
Yeah,
so I'm just curious.
I don't know if you're going to see Virgo in September. To me, that's a spring thing. If you're going to see it in September, it's going to be right before the sun rises.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I know it's nothing related to the...
No, that's fine. But there might be something going on in Virgo on September 23rd. I'm not aware of it.
Okay.
Some of the other guys might be, but
Yeah.
I don't know if you're going to see Virgo then.
Well, I know because the solar eclipse you can't see with your own eyes.
Well, yeah, you can see the constellation with your own eyes
Yeah.
if you look at it. Bill, do you know of any event happening on September 23rd that you can think of that that might be taking place in Virgo? No, I don't.
Yeah, I don't know. I Google online that that's what a lot of people are saying about that, but I don't know either.
Any other questions? No, well, thanks. Thanks for coming, folks.